Welcome to Lacrosse Recruiting 101, where the biggest names in lacrosse share their inside views and expertise. Now, your host, Luke Cometti.
In this episode of the podcast, I talk with Liam Gleason, entering his second season as the head coach of the Siena men's lacrosse team. Prior to Siena, Liam was the defensive coordinator at the University at Albany under Coach Scott Marr for 7 seasons, and before that, the defensive coordinator for Siena College under Coach Brian Brecht for 3. Liam talks us through how the recent changes in recruiting rules has helped him with the recruiting process at Siena, as well as what he and his staff looks for in potential recruits and where they look for their potential recruits. He also gives some great pointers to any players going from high school to college and specific things to keep in mind to make that transition smoother on and off the field. If I missed something or there's something you'd like to see on the next podcast, then please email us at questions@lacrosserecruiting101.com or tweet at our Twitter handle @laxrecruit101. Thanks for listening. Liam Gleason, head coach of the Siena College men's lacrosse team. Thanks for taking the time to be here, man. It's always a pleasure to catching up with you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Luke. I like that intro.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're official business here.
Yeah, that's big deal stuff right there.
So as we get started here, why don't you just give us a little update on the summer and where you guys are from a recruiting standpoint and like a commitment standpoint?
Okay. Yeah. Well, this is we're entering our second year here on staff. So I started in July the previous year, where we were really working on 2019 recruits, and that was an interesting start for me. We started the 19 class with a couple commits from the previous staff, and had to really try to put together the strongest class we could starting in July, with the guys going into their senior year. So that was a little helter-skelter, but I think we did a fantastic job, and it's great to see these guys on as current freshmen on the field, and I definitely feel confident that we did a good job in a short amount of time. But with the 20 class, that was the first class we were able to put a full year recruiting into. So we were really excited with the way it started, with September 1 giving us the opportunity to start reaching out to the 20s last year. It was a long process. We committed probably 2 or 3 guys before the summer, and another 5 in the summer. So the class was for our 2020s was only an 8-person class. It is a little bit of a smaller class, but we started in September and finished probably early August. So there is some guys that committed to us early on in the process, but for us it was a lot of evaluating going on throughout the entire year that concluded the process with the rest of the class in the summer.
When you transitioned into taking over the program at Siena, has the new recruiting rules kind of helped that, especially with that 2019 class? It seems like it's pushing everything later. So is that what kind of gave you the opportunity to recruit a few in that grade and then help better transition into the 20 class?
Yeah, well, the 20 class is the first class that we had to wait till September 1. So the 19 class, again, we were a little bit behind the 8 ball, but I thought we did a good job of finding, and I think that's something that all the guys out there that are going through the process, there's it is a long process, and there is plenty of time. You could be in August of year going into your senior year and not have a home yet and still find a spot at a Division I program. But how it is going forward now with the 20s and now the 21s, I really enjoy it. I think it's certainly giving us more time to evaluate them before we're allowed to talk to them, and it's giving the student athletes an opportunity to grow and really craft their skill before they're worrying about making a decision and getting into all the visiting schools and all that. So I think it helps both of us. It helps us as coaches have more time to evaluate and maybe not guess on where somebody might be, 3-4 years later. And for the student athletes, it's giving them an opportunity to reach a higher potential and ability before they commit. I know for myself, I probably became a much better defenseman from my junior year into my senior year. So,
Yeah.
Being 6'4" and 220 pounds, I was a little gangly as far as didn't really have my feet under me. And if I had to go with those old recruiting rules, who knows where I would have ended up.
Yeah, it's smart. It seems to be smart across the board. There's less chance, and it seems that players tend to stay at programs longer, and it tends to work out for both sides. Now with the new recruiting rules, they can wait, they can see them develop, and the kids, and from both standpoints, and a player knows, okay, this is a school he actually wants to go to instead of being in freshman year, and he just likes the mascot or the colors of the school, because when you're that young, I mean, there's not too much else to go on.
Right, and I think you saw a lot of decommitments happening with some of that stuff, and I think it's important academically also. Is most guys, some of the 21s we're talking to now that are they're starting their junior year, they're not sure exactly what they're interested in academically, and that's something you want them to start to hone in. They don't have to really choose an exact major, but maybe come up with 3 to 4, maybe 5 majors that you might be interested in. So when you're doing your visits, you could choose a school that might have a couple of those. So in case you decide, hey, I want to be business, and then you change and you want to do bio, and that school doesn't have biology, then you're in a spot where you might have to transfer. So, when we had the early rules, I don't think guys had any idea what they were interested in when they were in 9th and 10th grade. So it definitely made it more difficult on them choosing their school based on the academic profile also.
Exactly. I still don't know what I'm interested in at this point. So this fall, where will you find yourself? Do you tend to recruit close to Albany area? Obviously upstate is a pretty good place to be recruiting. I know you have some ties down on Long Island where you're originally from. Where will you and your staff be this fall?
So we try to do we try to map out some different events, but a lot of the decisions we make on where we attend are going to be based on some of the communication we have with some of the 21s we're talking to now. I think the nucleus of our recruiting in the classes we're a lot in New York, and we recruit a lot of New York athletes, Long Island and upstate New York, and Westchester. But, we certainly are going to be out on the road down in Philadelphia and Delaware. And, we've gone out west, to California, to Texas, to Colorado. But, those decisions we usually start to make towards the end of October, leading into November, when we have a better idea of where are some of our prospects that we're currently talking to will be playing.
Okay. Do you set goals? Do you sit down with your assistants, Tim Cox and Derek Eccles, and say, hey, we want to be here by the end of the fall? Or do you guys just kind of have like an idea of what you're looking for, and sometimes you'll find 10 great recruits and sometimes you'll find 2, and you just kind of stick to the process?
I think that's a great question. For us, last year it was an 8-person class, and with that being a smaller class, we really wanted to make sure we were making the right decisions. And the same thing here with our 21 class is going to be more towards about 12 student athletes. And I don't really say, hey, by January I want to have 5 committed. We want to make sure we're doing our job, getting enough evaluations on each guy, developing a relationship with them and seeing who they are as people, and I think that takes time. And some guys we might make a decision on a little quicker, and sometimes the process might start in September and it might not end till July or August. So it's I think it's a different case by case basis, but for us, I think we will probably have a couple of commits before our spring season starts, with just the way it started for us. But I'm not going to be upset if it's less than a certain number or more than a certain number. I think it's just going to be how the process works out. And I think for each student athlete, the process is different, so that changes it for us also.
Yeah, it sounds like the key is to be flexible with that, not settling.
Right.
Knowing what kind of recruits you want, and not just taking guys because you want to fill up spots. But I think with the new recruiting rules as well, I mean, talking to other coaches, it seems that even some 20s are going to be committing this fall. Do you consider
Absolutely
20s at this point, or are you guys did you already fill that class? I know you said it's a smaller class, but.
So at this point we're keeping our eyes open, and we're not We're not saying we're not going to take another 2020 recruit, but I really like to try to keep my roster at about 48. But so if we find a 20 that is someone that we think can really help us and could be a really good fit for us, and we strike up a good relationship and everything goes well, I can see us taking another 2020 recruit. But at the same time, we try to keep a roster on 48. That's a number I'm very comfortable with. Gives us enough numbers to do some full field drills, and when injuries occur, not putting you in a spot where you have to change your practice plan. Once you start getting up to 50 and plus roster sizes, I think it's a little more difficult for the guys towards the end of the depth chart to feel like they have the same role and impact on the team. Yeah. So, it's something we try to stress to the whole team. When you're, if you are the last guy in the depth chart, you're still running scout. You're still impacting how our team does on game day. And I think once you get to those larger rosters, it's a little tough for them to feel like they have that impact if they're, number 52, 53 or higher.
Yeah, I think you said it right there. I mean, I remember being at Syracuse and we had the roster numbers into the 50s. And at that point, you got guys that aren't playing and aren't even making the scout team. So it is tough to stay motivated. It's tough to keep those guys engaged. And, at that point, they may just become a distraction.
Yeah, and that's what I definitely always try to avoid. And 48, when you generally have 48, you're going to have 2 to 3 guys injured, and you hope not more than that. But it happens. We've already had one of our freshmen this year, go down with a knee injury, and you don't want to put yourself in a spot where you have to alter the things you want to do in practice because you don't have the numbers to do it.
Yeah, and so if I recall correctly, you guys had a prospect day this past weekend.
Yes, we did.
How did that go? And what are you looking for when you set up these prospect days, and what do you get out of them?
I personally believe they are one of the best recruiting tools we have as coaches for both the coaches and the student athletes. Now I know a lot of student athletes out there are getting these prospects, are getting these emails, and they might get a bunch of them, but it's up to them to choose the schools that they're interested in, and it's probably the best opportunity to get a real feel for the coach and for the school. Even when you do a visit, and for just a visit with not attached to a prospect day, you're not getting that opportunity to be coached in the field, to see the dynamic, the way the coaches interact with the players on the field and the drills that they're doing. And I think that's something that's very valuable for a prospect, for a potential student athlete. And for that opportunity to just also do that on the campus, take a tour and get that full experience. For us, it went great. We had great numbers. We were able to do a good hour and a half scrimmage. I was very excited with some of the 20s that arrived, some of the guys that we're going to keep an eye on and potentially take one of them. The 21 class was definitely deep, and we had some 22s there that we felt very strongly about. So for those guys, now we're putting them into our recruiting software. We're starting to develop a 2022 board. And now September 1 next year, those are guys hopefully we'll get a chance to see in the fall and summer. Yeah. And get second and third evaluations and potentially fourth and fifth in the summer, to where we can, put them in a spot where now we know where they are and we can grade them where we want to treat them for September 1. For the 21s, we didn't come out of there saying, well, we really wanted to sign one of these guys, but for us, it gave us an evaluation, and it gives us another opportunity now in November to see them play. And at that point, you might feel comfortable enough to move forward.
Yeah. I mean, clearly there's a lot of benefits with the prospect days. It kind of already breaks down that barrier that the player is interested, and then it makes it almost easier for you coaches to evaluate and to start up that conversation. They're already on campus. It's almost a visit and an evaluation all in one. But obviously you can't just do prospect days all year. You need to attend other events. And where do you and your staff find yourself at more? Like recruiting tournaments with the club teams, individual showcases, or even being in upstate? Do you attend high school games?
Yeah, I mean, we're fortunate enough that when the spring comes around, we're fortunate enough to be close to a lot of good upstate lacrosse. And we'll even take a trip down to Long Island when the schedule commits. It's tough. Recruiting in the spring during your season is definitely a tough thing to do, and I don't think it's something that we put that much time into because of how much effort we have to put into our current team. But we go out on the road and we split it up. We're at 3 full-time staff members on the road at once, and we mix it up. We'll be at showcases. We'll be at I love the Tully tournament up in upstate New York because those are guys playing in their high school colors or high school teams. Same thing with Tom Rotan's Fall Classic down in Long Island. You get the Long Island teams and some out-of-state teams playing with their high school teams, which is something I always enjoy seeing. But there's always the club side to it also. It's the NLF event down there that's usually coupled with that, and the Fall Classic has its own club side to it also. So you see it. We're going to really hit all. The NXT event in Philadelphia we've gone to, and we attend every year, and that starts off with a showcase the first day, or vice versa, showcase into a club tournament, or a club tournament to showcase. I'm not sure which way it goes, but you're going to get to see a lot of different venues and opportunities to see how the guys react when they're at a showcase. It's definitely different. You got to take that into consideration. These guys are guys that haven't played together often, if they have played at all together. And that's where you're trying to see, is he making the right looks, or is he kind of just trying to showcase his own ability? That's the struggle I think you see at showcases versus club teams or high school team tournaments, where they're kind of a little more chemistry there, and the guys are able to help each other out and showcase their abilities.
Well, can you really blame the player at an individual showcase to almost try to do a little too much? Because if you're hesitant, you could be at a showcase for the whole day, and if you're an attackman and you only get the ball, you have a bad face-off guy, you only seen the ball 10 times a game, you need to almost try to make things happen. So it's not easy for a player. But
no,
are you sympathetic to that?
Yeah, and I think you have to try to. That's where that's as coaches. That's where we got to read and try to figure out the situation. I think it's probably toughest for if you're an attackman who's a great off-ball guy moving and cutting off ball, and suddenly you're not getting any feeds, and then suddenly you get the ball in your stick, and you're like, okay, well, I've been working my butt off ball all day. Now it's my turn. So I think that is something as a coach you try to keep that in consideration when you're evaluating, and that's when it's helpful to hopefully see them at another team event also where maybe they have a little more chemistry. But it's a challenge for them. Absolutely, it's a challenge for us and for them. We want to get a good evaluation in, and they're trying to showcase their ability to the best of their ability. So you gotta try to read between the lines a little bit and see, okay, maybe he didn't make that pass because he hasn't touched the ball in the whole first half here.
When you're sitting on the sideline for whether it's a showcase or even your prospect day or a recruiting tournament, what's the number one thing that catches your eye from a player?
Well, I'm definitely looking at the way they handle themselves and their attitude. I'm a big believer in positive body language and positive energy. And, when a guy makes a mistake, how is he going to respond? Is he going to, if it's an attackman, is he going to get back and ride as hard as he can and try to make up for it? Or is he going to kind of probably put his palms up or put his head in the sky or put his head down? And that's something that, I don't say I cross the guy off the list, but I'll make a note of it. And I'll give them an opportunity to try to respond in the future. So I'm certainly looking at body language and how they're playing. What's their overall energy? Are they out there having fun when they're scoring or getting an assist? Are they going up and giving their teammate a handshake or a dap or something like that? And those are things I like to see. Obviously, just pure athleticism is something that usually jumps off the pages a little bit when you're watching somebody. If he's consistently making very athletic plays and running by guys, or being the first to GBs every time, that's something that generally will jump out a little bit. And then again, all that will get you noticed and get some notes in the paper. But then it's our job as coaches to find out who you are and reach out to your club coach, reach out to your high school coach, and get some feedback on what their opinions are of each PSA. And and that's still starting the process before you might even reach out to that student athlete. I might call a club coach, a high school coach, and watch a student athlete twice before I reach out to the potential student athlete. So it's certainly a process. There's certain guys you might be a little more convinced early on, but I definitely want to bring somebody into my program that's going to fit the mold and be the right kind of person for what we're looking for.
Absolutely. And you mentioned body language, and that's something that could almost get you crossed off your list. You like to give players another chance, but is there anything else that you're aware of that maybe if a high school player is listening right now that he can be conscious of when he goes to these events to, have coaches evaluate him and not get crossed off the list, other than body language? Is there something, maybe a theme or something consistent you see amongst players that you're like, oh man, I wish, they would eliminate, the way he tries to take away the ball instead of staying in front and just playing defense with the feet? Is there anything kind of easy like that, or something, a player could take home, take note, and apply at the next showcase they're at?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely looking to see how competitive you are too, and how when the game's going well, are you continuing to keep your foot on the pedal, and when it's going down, are you working to get it going your way and respond? You're certainly looking for guys that make the right lacrosse plays, that play with a high lacrosse IQ, as far as coming down on a fast break. If you draw that point defenseman and you're going to just try to dodge that point defenseman on that side instead of hitting the point guy, that's something that, we're going to see you didn't make the right play. So it's kind of letting the game come to you. And I think that, if you're a good lacrosse player and you have great ability and you're athletic, if you let the game come to you and you put yourself in the right spots, you're going to do a good job of showcasing your ability. So I think it's playing within yourself and not trying to be something you're not, and not going out there and just thinking you got to make a play every single time. It's a lot of lacrosse to play, usually in these events, and those plays will be made if you're doing it the right way. So I think, again, a competitive edge and how you're responding to different situations in the games, but then also just letting the game come to you and playing within whatever the system is or whatever the situation calls for.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of switching gears here, looking at your background, right? You played 2 years at University at Albany. You were 3 years assisting Coach Brecht at Siena. Then you took the head coaching job at St. Rose, the D2 school right there in Albany, helped get that program started. Then you took the assistant job at University at Albany under Coach Marr as a defensive coordinator. Now you find yourself back at Siena. And, the first thing I noticed in all that is that obviously you're a big fan of the 518. But also just being in the area so long, coaching at all these different programs, how does that help now with recruiting players to Siena? And if it does help, in what ways?
Well, I think for specifically to Siena I was fortunate enough when I got my first job here, when Brian Brecht hired me in the fall of 2007. I was kind of thrust into a spot where I had to I was fortunate enough to be a defensive coordinator right away, and we had some really, really fantastic teams, and we had a lot of success. We won the first MAC championship in school history for us in the spring of '09, where we got to go then to play a tournament and play Syracuse. But even in 2008, we had some monumental wins for the program. When we beat Harvard, we beat Loyola. Those were big wins for Siena, and having that success before we really had a lot of the stuff we had here now. Before when I came here 2 years ago to interview and saw the facilities and the upgrades and the increased support, it was very eye-opening to me that, look, we had success 10 years ago when I was an assistant here, and we have so much more available now and so many more resources that I know this is a place we can be successful and return to a strong program in the MAC. I mean, we want to be competing for a MAC championship every year. That gives us the opportunity to get into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
So being able to relate to the student athletes and explain to them my experience here as a student athlete, talk to them about the success that we had when I was an assistant coach, and then also, being in the area for a long time. I don't think I would have been able, I'm from Long Island, and when I got up here in the fall of 2005, my first semester at Albany, I don't think you would ever been able to tell me I would have been living in 518 the rest of my life. But that's where we're at right now, and I know the area well, and it's really the passion and the support for lacrosse, just by lacrosse fans in the area, has grown so much over the last, it's going on 12, 13 years here now. So it's great to be able to have that experience and kind of talk to the players about that. I mean, both Siena, Albany, RPI, and the local schools, we all do fantastic with our attendance numbers and how much support the community gives just to coming out and watching these great college programs play.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Iron Horse Lacrosse, the #1 lacrosse program in Texas for travel teams, camps, and clinics. For more information on Iron Horse, visit their website at www.ironhorselax.com. So another thing that stands out, D1 playing, D1 Siena, D1 Albany, and then going to the Division II program at St. Rose that hadn't started yet. And you had to kind of build that program, recruit to a program that wasn't there yet. And I imagine that was a pretty good learning experience for you. Being able to recruit to a program that doesn't exist yet, and then find yourself at the University of Albany recruiting to a school that is on the top 10 with the Thompson brothers, it seems like every other week. How has starting that program, even though you never even coached there, you started the program, how has that helped in your experience?
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting experience. I ended up being fortunate enough to accept the head coaching position there in the spring of 2010 after 3 years with Siena, and it was something I was really excited about. And we spent a full year recruiting. I believe it ended up being 32 student athletes to St. Rose, and it was I have to say, it was one of the most difficult decisions I made in my life to actually move on to back to Albany in August or July of that 2011, I believe it was, after a year of recruiting. But it was an eye opener. When I was at Siena as an assistant, I definitely helped with the recruiting, but Coach Brecht was the recruiting coordinator, and he did a lot of that part of the program. So when I went to St. Rose, it was me, and it was you got to bring 32 guys, you got to bring enough guys to have a team the first year, and you got to sell something that doesn't exist yet. So it was there was a lot of phone calls, there was a lot of legwork, there was a lot of learning that happened that year, and I certainly think it molded me into the recruiter I am today. And I built a lot of relationships, which made it very difficult to move on before the program started.
Yeah.
But it definitely gave me so much experience that year that I was able to take on to Albany and moving forward to where I am now. But it was you had to sell your vision, and that that's a great part about for me now, is having that experience, because when I went to Albany, not being the head coach, it's the head coach's vision for the program, and it was something I was used to because I was an alumni.
Yeah.
But at the same time, at St. Rose, is selling my vision, and that's what I'm doing here at Siena, is talking about my vision and where I want this program to be, and how we're going to get there. And that's something I could definitely attribute to that 1 year at St. Rose, is having that experience to go out there and have those conversations.
Yeah, and being a player that you have interest in, and they see that vision and they want to be a part of your program and they end up committing, what should they expect? What do they expect from the time that they commit to the time their first day in the fall at Siena?
Well, it's the one thing that all recruits should know is when you make that decision, it doesn't just stop.
The work's just getting started.
Right, exactly. You maybe have a little relief or weight off your shoulders, which I hate that so many recruits and potential student athletes have this this overwhelming feeling that they have to make a decision, and it's a tough, it's a tough process for some of them. But it should be the most exciting process you go through, and it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But when you make that decision, it's knowing, hey, you made a decision. This coach believes in you, and now you got to live up to what they think, and maybe surpass it, and pick up the work ethic and the work habits, and take a game to another level. It's you certainly don't want to see a recruit who works so hard to get recruited and then commit and then dial it down. If anything, you should dial it up. So my job at that point is to continue the relationship that we have began, and talk on the phone and stay in touch with them, but also motivate them to take their game to another level. Some of the guys I talk to now, I'm talking to them about their leadership roles on their football teams and soccer teams, and things that they're going through in a competitive atmosphere, and trying to give them my advice on how we do it here, and how maybe they can help out their current teams now. But it's a long process, and once you commit, it's still the part that you're going to continue to grow as as a student athlete and a young man.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a 2021 commit right now in the fall, you're not seeing him for almost 2 years. So that,
Right.
that's a long time. And I like to tell our players, it's like, yeah, you don't need to go to a bunch of tournaments and a bunch of showcases anymore. You've committed, and that's awesome. But you still need to concentrate on getting better. And sometimes, especially being from Austin, Texas, you do need to travel a little bit to play that top competition to get better. So
yeah, I agree with that. I think
so. It's really kind of finding that balance.
Right, I agree with that. I think you could take a step back, maybe as far as how much money you're investing into some of the going to 15 events in the summer.
Exactly.
But I don't think it's something you stop. You need to keep the stick in your hand. You still need to be competitive. You need to have that drive. And if you just kind of think you're gonna go off and do your own, guys that you believe need to continue to get that experience. But in the fall, it's about the development of the entire team. So we haven't had a competition yet. Our first competition this weekend will be our alumni game, but then first true competition versus another team will be on October 20th, when Binghamton and Lemoyne come to us for a great event, a Lacrosse versus Cancer fundraiser. But that's when we'll probably put our first depth chart out there, and guys will get to see where they're at. But that's never changed anything. Also, depth chart. You have to train to be a starter, no matter where you are, because your number can be called. It's next man up, and we have guys. Like I kind of alluded to before, in the spring. When you're maybe not a starter, you are still impacting the team as far as we do scout teams. And if I got a guy who's an offensive player on scout team, and he's consistently scoring goals and doing great things versus our starting defense, or vice versa, a defender who's constantly stripping our starters or making plays, we might move that guy up and give him a chance. So it's a consistent tryout as far as moving up the depth chart, but it's also understanding that you're helping the starters at the time prepare for their next contest. So there's your impact right there. But yeah, in the fall we're going 5 days a week. We'll stop with that on October 25th. That's when we'll dial it down to 8 days a week. 8 days a week, 8 hours a week. That's yeah. We'll dial it down to 8 hours a week, which
seems
is
like
4,
8 days a week.
Right. Well, it's not, which is great. It's an opportunity now for them to have a little more free time. We'll go 4 hours of lacrosse instruction and 4 hours of lifting and speed and agility instruction. We go Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the fall. In that 8 hour segment. So that's really October 25th until early December when finals start. So that gives the guys off Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. So you're getting 4 days off a week. And I think that gives them a little bit of time to, put the stick down a little bit, also concentrate on their academics. But it's also going to be a big focus on the development of individual skills and the speed and agility and strength training on those days we are together.
Yeah, and what you said earlier, right? You're going right in with practice 5 days a week, lift 3 days a week, plus just the transition of high school to college from an academic standpoint, living on your own,
Right.
social distractions. How do you help your younger players, your freshmen coming in with that transition? And what is some advice
Yeah,
you
I mean,
have for anyone who's transitioning to a program like that?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk about it all the time, and that's having balance. And that also has to do with taking care of your body too. Is you worked on not having a habit of staying up to 2 a.m. doing homework. As
Or
a
doing
Division
other
One
things?
athlete, you need to take it right, exactly on the weekends, right? How what are you putting into your body? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting a sweat in on your day off? We tell our guys, consistently trying to get 8 hours of sleep, making sure they're hydrating, trying to drink half their body weight, and just doing the things that make sure you're eating food before practice. And that is a challenge in itself, right there. We have a great fuel station being added that we partnered with Whole Foods, but before
Awesome.
that, you need to when you show up to. I'll tell you right now, our Monday practice, we have a lot of guys that have practice class at 8 a.m. And then class will end about 9:10, and then they got 50 minutes before we're on the field. So are you getting up at 7:15, getting some breakfast in you before class? Are you trying to or not eating and then trying to rush something in between class and then practice at 10, where maybe you could have been getting a little more treatment, getting in the hot tub to loosen up before practice,
Yep.
or getting out on the field a little early and hitting the wall ball, and it's all about that, preparing yourself for practice also. It's about talking about balance and making sure you're doing the right things to have success, and that's making sure you're setting a time aside to do your schoolwork, and making sure you're going to bed at the right time, and preparing yourself in the morning with putting food in your stomach. And but that's different for freshmen because it's not something they're used to. You don't have mom and dad making you breakfast in the morning, making sure you're getting up on time.
Exactly.
So it's certainly a growing an adjustment for them, but it's something that we try to address right away, and stress the importance of it so they can have more success with their everyday life.
Yeah, seems like in high school it's so structured. Like you said, parents are making breakfast or they're there. You eat, you go to school, class, class, class. Obviously, once you get to college, it's a lot more free flowing. And I just think of my transition into Albany and even at Syracuse. You tend to learn what works and what doesn't work. How you end up having the best output on the field. What you have to do to take care of your body and whatnot. But that's kind of an evolving process throughout your college years. And I think it's great that you're conscious of that. And, if you share that with your freshmen or even sharing it here to be aware of. And, sometimes it goes in one ear, out the other, but kids can take notes here and there. And then the staff's conscious about it. And maybe the upperclassmen, and they're doing the right things. I mean, that's kind of contagious. And I mean, I'm sure that just helps with your whole program and your team come springtime.
Absolutely. I mean, and the work habits, the study habits. I mean, I think that is one of the things. Like you said, it is an evolving process. I think figuring out, developing a routine for your work habits. Where are you going to do your homework? Where are you going to do your study work? Is it the best spot for you to do it? I talk to our guys all the time. Get out of the dorm. Get to our study hall. Get to the library. Put yourself in a spot where it's a working atmosphere, and everybody around you is working, because then it does become contagious. And then when you are in the library, are you somebody that's going to do better in our collaborative area where you're going back and forth with somebody, or is that going to be more of a distraction for you and you should be in one of the study cubbies somewhere along the wall or the corner? I mean, personally, I excelled much more when I figured out, hey, let's get yourself in a spot where you're by yourself in the corner. It probably took me half the time to get my work done, and I did it a lot better. But that took a little while to figure that out. And that is the thing you need to do, is you need to develop that routine so you set yourself up for success. We have free tutors available to our guys, and I constantly stress, take advantage of having the tutors. If you're going to study for a test, why not do it with a tutor? It's not signing up for
Exactly.
another lecture. It's signing up for somebody who's going to help you with the questions you have, shed some light onto some of their knowledge of the subject. And for our freshmen, when they come in, they're required to do study hall hours. You're getting study hall credit when you meet with the tutors also. So it's and that's something too. I mean, I could tell my guys about the tutors, but nobody's going to force you to get a tutor unless you're really doing poorly, then we'll force you. But that's something that, learning to kind of reach out and take advantage of the resources that are available to you, like a writing center and something like that, not everybody does, but when you do, what a great resource that is for you.
Yeah, it's comparable to, you can practice, lacrosse drills on your own, or you can have a coach there pointing things out and making you better and doing things you should do from his experience. I mean, obviously it's a no-brainer, right? Why would I not have the coach there? Same thing when studying for a test,
exactly.
right? Using analogies
Right.
like that, because obviously a tutor, I don't need a tutor, I'm good, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, it's so helpful. And that's, like I said, that evolving process, that's something I learned and I took advantage of all the time, by the way, ending at Syracuse there.
Absolutely.
Liam, this has been awesome. Great info. I got one last question for you. I like to end with this one. If every one of your future players for the Siena men's lacrosse team was listening to this podcast, what would you tell them?
I love that. I would just be ready to, have a lot of fun, be excited to come down to practice every day. And that's one of my goals as a coach, is to make sure lacrosse practice is the most exciting part of each of my guys' days. Because to me, when you're having fun and you're excited about what you're doing, you're playing your best lacrosse. So we certainly like to try to keep it fun, and you're going to be held accountable, and it's going to be tough at times. But we definitely do our best to make it each practice a fun day, and we'll get the music going, we'll get the fun drills in there, and there's times you're going to be pushed to your limits, but we're definitely not a group here that is going to be something that you're going to dread coming down to practice for.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's so true. When you have fun, not only are you enjoying it, but you're putting in, you're playing your best, it goes by quick, and it makes your day that much better. But
no doubt.
Liam, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you taking the time. Best of luck, obviously, in this 2020 season coming up and the end of the fall here. And I'll be in touch. We'll probably see each other on the recruiting trail soon.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to Lacrosse Recruiting 101. Catch us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Have a question for Luke? Email them to questions@lacrosserecruiting101.com.